I am so excited to share this paint tutorial where I completely transformed this old gray office chair into this beautiful pink with just a little bit of paint. So what I wanted to show you right away is how amazing this fabric is. Chair is super soft, super comfortable. There is no color transfer on my clothing at all. And it feels really nice to sit in, and the fabric is absolutely flexible. So I wanted to start there before I ever show you exactly how to paint your fabric at your house. Hi there, I'm Tracy, also known as Porch Daydreamer, and I'm the queen of painting everything. Yes, I have a unique background. I actually have a degree in textile, chemistry, and engineering, and also worked for a long time in the paint industry, so I understand both. And I applied all of my knowledge to end up painting this fabric that was once a plush velour gray. I know the first question you're going to have is, what type of paint did you use, Tracy? And the cool thing is you can use any acrylic latex paint. So I went by the color. I wanted to paint this chair this gorgeous color called Gracious Rose from Sherwin-Williams. So I just bought a quart of satin paint. So nothing too fancy there. But where it gets special is the formula that I created to make sure that it would adhere to the fabric but also remain really soft and smooth. So it's completely pliable. This is my office chair. I sit in it and use it all day, every day, and I have for about a week now, and it still looks just as perfect. So the formula that I crafted to paint this polyester fabric, it's just a sheared off velour type fabric, is I mixed 1/3 water, 1/3 fabric softener, and 1/3 paint. And in order to paint this whole chair, it took about 1.5 cups of paint, 1.5 cups of water, and 1.5 cups of fabric softener. So what I did to make sure the mixture was ready to be used and applied to the fabric is first I poured the fabric softener into a container. Then I added the same amount of hot water. I stirred the fabric softener together with the water before I added the paint. Then I added the paint, and once I combined all of those ingredients of the water, the fabric softener, and the paint, I made sure to thoroughly stir everything together so it felt like a nice thick paint. But you don't want it to be too thick and you don't want it to be too thin. You want it to feel like a regular high quality paint. Now that you know what the formula is to be able to paint your fabric, I want to talk about the preparation. So you want to make sure that you vacuum off all dust and dirt. And what I did too is I wiped my chair down with just some baby wipes to get it nice and clean before I ever applied the paint mixture. So with that, let's dive right in and walk you through how to paint your fabric a beautiful new color. The other tutorials you may have seen, they sprayed the fabric with water before applying their mixture. So it is accepting the paint and the fabric softener in the water just fine without pre-spraying it. So I just wanted to mention that before I get going too far. Thinner layers are going to be better. I can just tell I put way too much paint on my brush. I actually dripped it right here. So I'd say don't overload your brush. I'm going to paint in the direction of the nab. I'm finding that that is giving it a nice smooth finish. And it's actually, frankly, easier to paint. And it's giving me nice, even coverage this way. I just wanted to show you my technique that I'm going in long strips on this back side because it's so smooth. It's making it much easier to paint. And I can't get the paint to run all the way top to bottom. So I'm starting at the top and then meeting the two together to make the color blend. And you can see when I go up against the nap, you can see it raises the nap. And then when I come back down, it smooths it. And so I'm always going to finish off by smoothing it in the end. Hopefully that makes sense, but look how pretty this is going to be. It's such a beautiful color. So I'm noticing I got a lot of splatter on the metal bottom half of this chair. I'm not worried about it. The open time, so the working time of this, because of the fabric softener, is so long that this will wipe off with some baby wipes. But I would suggest if you've got a chair where you've got areas, obviously, that you don't want to paint, you definitely want to tape that stuff off. But there's no way this paint is going to adhere to this metal, so I'm safe, just in case you noticed. Okay, so the first coat is done. I would say in total that took me about 45 minutes. Some of that was because trying to get into all of these little nooks and crannies, I'm going to call them, was pretty difficult just to work the paint. The big takeaways I have are definitely like you can brush back and forth with your brush to work it into the nap of the fabric, but then definitely strike off. So run your brush in the direction of the actual nap of the fabric to smooth things out. I'm going to be super curious to see how long this takes to dry. My expectation is I'm probably going to get a heated fan and run it over this to try to speed up the dry time. When you think about it, there's water and paint. We added water to the mixture, and then obviously fabric softener is going to take a good long time to dry. So I'm assuming maybe even 24 hours before we can touch this again and add another coat. Wrap your brush in some plastic wrap, so just basic plastic wrap, and cover over your mixture and store it so it's airtight. So that will keep so you can go ahead and use it again for the second coat. All right, I'll see you in another day. We'll see what this looks like once it's dry. So it's the next morning and I let my chair dry overnight, and I'm happy to report that everything is nice and dry. And I would say to you that what you need to do is obviously applying thin coats is best, is if you push down, especially on these horizontal surfaces, and no paint transfer happens, then you're good to go. So the next stage in this process is we are going to lightly sand our fabric just to knock down some of that roughness with a 220 grit sanding block. And then we're going to clean off all of that sanding dust before we apply the next layer. We want to make sure that that paint is going to absorb. So that's why it's really important that it's dry. So all you're going to do with your sanding block is just go, you can go in up and down motions, you can go in circular motions, but just kind of feel with your hand, and all of a sudden it'll feel like it's back to the original fabric and it feels nice again. So I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera, and I'll be back to tell you what the next steps are. So the next thing we're going to do is vacuum off the fabric like we did in the beginning, and then we're going to wipe everything down with a damp rag just to make sure we get all that sanding dust back off the fabric. So I've got my wrap brush from yesterday, and I took the plastic off of my paint mixture, and it's still great and ready to be used again today. Just make sure you really stir it up before you start applying. We're going to apply our paint mixture the same way that we did yesterday. We want to focus on a thin coat, so don't over apply it, don't oversaturate your brush. And also work with, if you have a nap fabric like I do that's got a little plushness to it, definitely work it into the grain of the fabric. If you have a smooth fabric, it's good to go back and forth as well, because fabric, I have a textile degree, fabric when it's woven has 90-degree angles, so you want to make sure you get into those grooves. If it's knit, like something like this, then there's like loops that go like this. Then you want to make sure you get in all those nooks and crannies too. So it's just important. You just want to get as much coverage as you can. And I'm also going to focus on where I see a lot of the gray showing through, that I'm going to make sure I get a little bit more paint in that space to cover over it. The other thing is I noticed I missed a little bit underneath that I'm going to make sure it doesn't show all that much. I just want to make sure though that I get a little bit more color underneath. Just a reminder, paint always looks lighter before it dries, and it'll dry to the true color. But I'm getting really good coverage, so fingers crossed, just one more coat and this is it, and I'm done. So I finished the second coat on the back. I just wanted to show it to you real quickly. And when I flip this around, you're going to see what the big difference is. See the big difference between the gray showing through, and now we're seeing very little gray. So I finished the second coat. I just wanted to pop in and give you a quick spin. You can see it starting to dry on this side. And something else I have to mention that I just don't want you to be surprised by this, but it's kind of a nice little perk, that Pick a fabric softener that you love the smell of, because my whole room and this chair smells just like that Gain fabric softener, and it smells delicious. I love it. I'd like you to let everything dry overnight just to be safe before you do any sanding. Okay, so I was in the river of Egypt called Denial, thinking I could get away with only applying 2 coats of paint to fabric. It is going to take a 3rd coat. Also, I'm just not happy with the number of brush marks I'm seeing. And part of that, I think, is it's just not giving me enough coverage. So that's why the 3rd coat, I think, is going to cover up a lot of that. And then the other thing I decided to do is I'm just going to use a much larger and wider brush. So I think it's just going to take less time and be much easier. So once I get going with this, I'll have to let you know if I think working with a bigger brush is better. The other thing that I'm going to do on this 3rd coat, because I don't have to get the paint into the nap as much as I did before, is I think I'm going to try to stay with the grain of the fabric to try to also eliminate brush marks. And I'm testing it out on the back because it's smoother. So the wider brush is definitely making everything go much faster, and it's just easier. Plus, I feel like because I can do broad, long strokes, I'm applying a little bit more paint, not over applying it, but I'm just getting it on and walking away. Here's the front. So that's 2 coats. And then here is the back with 3 coats. And you can see the coverage is so much better. I just finished with the 3rd coat of our paint mixture, and it's feeling like I'm putting a lot of paint on this fabric. And so I was trying to be as mindful as I could to try not to over apply it, but I started getting super frustrated around all these little diamonds and trying to get the paint in there that I might have over applied the paint. But the good thing is, once everything gets completely dry, I'm definitely going to let this final coat dry 24 hours. So this is after the 3rd coat is dried 24 hours, and I just want to show you how I'm sanding. And the main thing is keep using your hand to feel where there's rough texture and go ahead and sand it. You can see I'm being pretty aggressive. Don't be scared, but don't sand off the paint either. All right, so this chair has been fully sanded. I vacuumed off all the sanding dust, and please make sure you do that at your house too. And the fabric feels so nice and looks so beautiful. It still feels pretty velvety. It's a little bit rougher, but it looks absolutely gorgeous. I'm super happy with the painted finish. Now, I have been letting this dry another 3 days. So I want you to make sure that everything is incredibly dry before we move to the protection step. Because we used water-based paint, we definitely want to protect our painted finish. And what we're going to use is Scotchgard. So this is Scotchgard, but for outdoor use. Yeah, is it maybe a little bit overkill? That's okay. We just want to make sure we protect all of our hard work. What's also nice about this is it just requires 1 good even coat. I typically would not spray this inside my house like I'm going to do right now. I've protected all of the horizontal surfaces with painter's plastic and the walls that are adjacent to where I'm going to be spraying. I would recommend you take whatever it is that you have painted the fabric and take it outside in a shady spot and put a drop cloth down, because if this lands on any concrete or anything, it will make that concrete and create a water barrier on the concrete. So we don't want that. So definitely put some kind of barrier down on the ground. But we're going to apply this just like we would any kind of spray paint, about 8 to 10 inches away, long, even coats. I'm going to talk you through that as I am spraying, but it's pretty simple. And all you do is you let this dry. I would say probably overnight. We can use our heated fan technique, which is likely what I'm going to do to speed up dry time. You can see I'm using long sweeping motions, and I'm overlapping the spray so we get good even coverage. I'm going to do a second pass, and actually I'm going to run in the opposite direction because we want to just make sure we cover all of the fibers of the fabric. And that's it. Just go ahead, apply your Scotchgard, and let it dry. Okay, so that's a wrap on this how to paint fabric tutorial. I just wanted to show you sitting in the chair one last time and how absolutely gorgeous it is. If you love this tutorial, please like and share with a friend who may want to paint some fabric at their house. I hope to see you in another paint class soon.